My wife filed for divorce on a grey Tuesday morning in October, and my 7-year-old daughter stood in front of a family court judge with a tablet clutched against her chest and asked, in a voice so small that it should never have been carrying the weight of grown people's sins, "Your Honor, may I show you something that my dad does not know about?" The judge looked at her over the rim of her glasses. The courtroom fell into a silence so complete that I could hear the old heating system clicking inside the wall. And when the first video began to play, the room changed. Not loudly, not with shouting at first, but with the kind of stillness that comes when every person present understands that the story they thought they were hearing has just collapsed beneath them. I remember the smell of that room before I remember the faces. It smelled like old varnished wood, damp wool coats, paper files, and the sharp sterile bite of disinfectant. It smelled like waiting rooms and punishment. I remember my own hands folded in my lap because I did not know what else to do with them. And I remember being aware of how old they looked under the fluorescent lights, the veins raised, the knuckles rough, the pale crescent scars from decades of ordinary work. My name is Dennis Patterson. I was 63 years old that morning, old enough to know that life can change, old enough to have survived layoffs, surgeries, funerals, recessions, and the slow lowering of expectations that comes with age, but still foolish enough to believe I understood the house I lived in and the people sleeping beneath its roof. I had been married to Amanda for 15 years. We had one daughter, Skylar, who was 7, who still slept with a stuffed elephant named Blue, who asked questions about the moon, who liked pancakes shaped like uneven hearts, and who used to run to the front door when she heard my key in the lock. I had thought until that morning that whatever Amanda and I were going through was some terrible late marriage weather, cold and unexpected, but survivable if I worked hard enough and apologized for enough things. I had thought that if I listened, adjusted, reduced my travel, came home earlier, paid closer attention, and stopped defending myself every time she said I was not present enough, then perhaps we could repair whatever had cracked between us. I did not know that Amanda was not trying to repair anything. She was not standing in a damaged house with me, looking for beams we could reinforce. She had already moved into another house inside her mind, one where I existed only as a paycheck, a legal obstacle, and a story she could tell about neglect. The morning began with Amanda sitting across the aisle from me in a navy dress I had bought her 2 Christmases earlier. She had worn it that day with a silver necklace and pearl earrings, the careful costume of a woman who wanted to appear wounded but dignified. Her lawyer, Mara Vinton, was a sharp-faced woman with narrow glasses and a voice that never rose because it did not need to. She arranged her folders with surgical precision and glanced toward Amanda after every major accusation, as if confirming the timing of a performance. My own attorney, Robert Chen, sat beside me with a yellow legal pad and a calm expression that I later understood was professional restraint. At the time, I mistook it for uncertainty, because I was uncertain about everything. The petition said irreconcilable differences, but the way Mara described our marriage made it sound like Amanda had spent 15 years trapped with an emotionally negligent man who used his job as a fortress and his income as a substitute for love. She spoke of my 60 and 70-hour work weeks. She spoke of business travel. She spoke of missed dinners, calls taken in the driveway, delayed school pickups, a dance practice I had missed during a mandatory company training trip in Ohio. Each example was not entirely invented, and that was the cruelty of it. Lies hurt, but half-truths are worse because they carry just enough of your own guilt inside them to make you bleed quietly. I had missed things. I had worked too much. I had justified long hours by telling myself that the mortgage, Skylar's dance lessons, Amanda's boutique, the orthodontic savings account, the car payments, the health insurance, and the college fund did not pay for themselves. I had told myself that providing was a form of presence, and maybe that was an old man's mistake. But as Mara spoke, as Amanda lowered her eyes at the right moments and tightened her mouth as if enduring a familiar humiliation, I began to wonder whether I had failed so completely that I had simply failed to recognize the failure. That was the first pressure cycle of the day, the one no one saw. Before my wife's lies were exposed, I believed them enough to hate myself. Skylar sat in the gallery between us, though not close enough to either parent to look claimed. Amanda had insisted she attend. I had argued against it in the hallway before court, keeping my voice low while Skylar stood 10 feet away holding Blue by one floppy ear. Amanda had looked at me with calm impatience and said the judge needed to understand the emotional reality of the household. I asked what emotional reality required a 7-year-old to watch her parents become enemies under oath. Amanda leaned closer, her perfume sweet and expensive and suddenly unfamiliar, and said, "You do not get to decide what she sees anymore, Dennis." That sentence had landed with a quiet force I did not know how to answer. By the time we sat down, Skylar had gone silent in the way children go silent when they know adults are pretending not to fight. She wore a purple sweater with a little embroidered cat near the hem, and her hair was tied back in a ponytail that had already loosened. Every few minutes she looked at me, then at Amanda, then at the judge, and each time I tried to smile at her, something inside her face tightened instead of relaxing. At first, I thought she was frightened by the courtroom. Later, I understood she was not frightened of the room. She was frightened of what she knew. Amanda did not cry. That should have been the first thing I truly noticed. She had always cried easily in private, at sentimental commercials, at old photographs, at Skylar's kindergarten graduation when the children sang off-key about growing up. But that morning she sat dry-eyed, her face composed, her hands resting lightly on her purse, her thumb moving once in a while across the edge of her phone as if checking time without checking time. When Mara described her as a devoted wife who had tried everything, Amanda lowered her head. When Mara described me as emotionally unavailable, Amanda closed her eyes for a moment, not long enough to seem theatrical, just long enough to be seen. I watched her and searched for the woman who used to leave notes in my lunch bag during the first year of our marriage. The woman who once stood barefoot in our half-painted nursery and cried because she was afraid she would not be a good mother. The woman who held my hand in the hospital when Skylar was born and whispered that we had made a miracle. That woman did not appear. In her place sat a stranger with my wife's posture, my wife's hair, my wife's wedding ring, and an expression I could not read then but would later recognize as calculation. During the first recess, I found Amanda near a window in the hallway, speaking with Mara in a whisper. When she saw me coming, she stopped. Mara touched Amanda's elbow, gave me a look that suggested I was already an inconvenience the court would soon manage, and stepped away only far enough to listen if needed. "Amanda, please," I said. My voice sounded older than I expected, and I hated that she could hear it. "Can we talk for 5 minutes without attorneys? Just 5 minutes. I know you are angry. I know I have not been perfect. But this is a marriage, Amanda. This is Skylar. We were talking about Disney World last month. We were talking about whether she was old enough for the roller coasters." She looked out through the courthouse window at the narrow strip of street below, where people were feeding parking meters and going on with their lives. And for 1 second I saw something move across her face. Not regret, fear maybe, irritation certainly. Then she turned back to me. "It is too late, Dennis. I have made my decision." The flatness of her voice scared me more than anger would have. "Too late for what?" I asked. "Too late for counseling. Too late for honesty. Too late for me to fix whatever you think I broke." Her jaw tightened. "Some things cannot be fixed. Some betrayals go too deep." She said the word betrayals as if placing a knife carefully between my ribs, and before I could ask what betrayal she meant, Mara returned and guided her away with a hand at the small of her back. Amanda did not look back. I stood there under a framed poster about mediation services and felt my confusion begin to harden into dread. When we returned, Amanda took the stand. She moved with the confidence of someone walking through a room she had already measured. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and began to lie in a voice so reasonable that it wounded me more deeply than shouting would have. She said she had been lonely for years. She said she had begged me to be more present, though I could not remember her begging, only sighing, withdrawing, making statements that arrived already sharpened, and then refusing to discuss them. She said Skylar had learned not to expect me at things. She said I used work as an excuse because I did not know how to connect emotionally. She said the marriage had become a shell, and that she had finally chosen to protect our daughter from a home where love had turned into silence. The judge listened carefully. Mara asked questions that sounded gentle but carried prepared hooks. Amanda answered with the steady rhythm of someone reciting a truth she had rehearsed so often that even she might have begun to believe parts of it. And I sat there taking each sentence into myself. I remembered work trips. I remembered late nights. I remembered being tired at dinner, not because I did not want to listen to Skylar talk about school, but because my body was heavy from 12 hours of solving other people's emergencies. I remembered Amanda texting me during dinner about supplier invoices, boutique rent, the credit card processor, the quarterly taxes she did not understand, and then later accusing me of being on my phone instead of engaging with the family. I remembered asking her one Sunday whether she still wanted to be married to me, and I remembered her saying, "Do not be dramatic, Dennis, just try harder." For months I had tried harder in the exact places she pointed to, and every time the target moved. While Amanda testified, Skylar's body changed. That is the only way I can describe it. She did not fidget like a bored child. She became still in layers. Her shoulders went tight. Her hands wrapped around Blue so hard that the stuffed elephant's fabric wrinkled. Then, during a pause while Mara searched through her papers, Skylar opened her backpack with a slow, careful motion and pulled out her tablet. I recognized it immediately, a pink case with a cracked corner, the one Amanda had bought for educational games and drawing apps. Skylar held it on her lap and stared at the screen without turning it on. I leaned toward her as far as I could without drawing attention. "Sweetheart," I whispered, "are you okay?" She looked at me then, and her eyes were wet but focused. "Daddy," she whispered back, "I need to tell someone something important." My stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" She glanced at Amanda, who was speaking again now, answering a question about how my absence had affected Skylar emotionally. Then Skylar bent closer to me. "I have something that shows the truth." Before I could say anything, Mara asked Amanda how Skylar had responded to my alleged emotional neglect, and Amanda's voice softened into the tone she used when speaking to teachers, doctors, neighbors, anyone she wanted to impress. "Skylar is a sensitive child," she said. "She tries to defend him because she loves him, of course, but children normalize what they know. She has been disappointed so many times that she does not always know she is disappointed." I saw Skylar's little face turn pale. Her fingers tightened around the tablet. Amanda continued, saying that she wanted Skylar to grow up in a home where her emotional needs were noticed, where she would not have to compete with a phone, a business trip, or a work crisis. The judge wrote something down. My attorney's pen stopped moving, and then Skylar stood up. She stood so suddenly that Blue slid from her lap onto the floor. The sound of that soft toy landing seemed impossibly loud. The judge looked up. Mara turned, irritation flashing first because she had not expected interruption. Amanda looked over her shoulder, and for 1 second the mask slipped. I saw not concern that her child was distressed, but alarm that a variable had moved outside its assigned place. Skylar raised one small hand, because that was what she had seen adults do in school when they needed permission to speak. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling but clear enough to carry, "may I please show you something that my daddy does not know about?" No one moved. I felt my body go cold from the chest outward. Judge Evelyn Morrison, who had presided over the morning with measured patience, looked at Skylar with a kind of grave softness. "What is it you would like to show me, young lady?" Mara was on her feet instantly. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The child has not been called as a witness. We have no foundation for whatever this may be, and any material on that device could be misleading or improperly obtained." Judge Morrison did not look away from Skylar. "Sit down, counselor." Mara's mouth closed, not because she wanted it to, but because the judge's voice gave her no room to keep it open. "If this child believes she has something relevant to these proceedings, I will hear enough to determine how to proceed." The judge leaned slightly forward. "Come here, sweetheart. Tell me your name." Skylar walked toward the front of the courtroom with the tablet pressed to her chest. She looked impossibly small against the dark wood, smaller than she had ever looked crossing a playground or standing in our kitchen asking for juice. My instinct was to stop her, to protect her from the adults in that room, from whatever storm was about to open, but I did not. I think some part of me understood that stopping her would be another version of failing her. She reached the front and stood near the clerk's table. "My name is Skylar Patterson," she said. "I am 7 years old. I live with my mommy and daddy, but my mommy wants to take me away from my daddy. And that is not fair because my daddy did not do the bad things." Amanda made a sound under her breath, not a word, just a sharp intake of air. Judge Morrison's face did not change, but her eyes shifted briefly toward Amanda and back. "What do you have on that tablet, Skylar?" Skylar swallowed. "Mommy gave it to me for games and learning, but it can make videos too. I made some videos because Mommy was acting different and saying different things when Daddy was not home. And I did not understand why she sounded nice in front of Daddy but mean when he was gone." She looked down at the tablet. "I did not want to be bad. I did not want to spy. But I was scared. And I thought if I had proof, maybe someone would believe me." The first video played with the small tinny sound of a tablet speaker, but the voice coming through it was unmistakable. Amanda's voice, Amanda's private voice, stripped of courtroom softness, stripped of maternal warmth, stripped of anything I could recognize as love. "Of course, I do not love him anymore, Marcus," she said. "I have not loved Dennis in years. He has just been useful, you know. A steady paycheck, someone to pay the mortgage and Skylar's expenses, while I figured out my next move." The courtroom disappeared around me. I stared at Amanda, but she was staring at the tablet, as if it had become an animal she had thought was tame. The recording continued. "The best part is that he is so trusting, so naive. He has no idea about us, no idea about any of it. He just goes to work every day like a good little provider, while I plan our future together. Once the divorce goes through and I get the house and the support, we can finally be together properly." I heard someone in the gallery shift. I heard Mara whisper, "Amanda." I heard my own breathing, shallow and humiliating. "Useful, good little provider." Those words did not strike like lightning. They sank slow and precise into 15 years of memory, changing the color of everything they touched. Every late night I had told myself was for my family. Every invoice I helped Amanda pay for the boutique. Every time I cancelled something for myself, because Skylar needed dance shoes or Amanda needed inventory money. "Useful, good little provider." Judge Morrison's eyebrows rose slowly. She did not interrupt until the recording ended. Then she looked at Amanda, whose face had gone pale beneath her makeup. "Is there more, Skylar?" Skylar nodded. "There are lots more. Would you like to see the one where Mommy is kissing the man who is not Daddy?" The courtroom erupted then. Mara objected loudly. Robert stood for the first time with sharp alertness. Amanda said Skylar's name in a tone I had never heard directed at our daughter before, a warning disguised as shock. The judge struck the bench once with the gavel, not dramatically, but hard enough to restore order. "Skylar," Judge Morrison said, "when did you make these recordings?" Skylar looked at the tablet. "Some were from last month, some before that. I made them when Mommy thought I was asleep or playing games. I did not show Daddy because Mommy said sometimes dads who feel betrayed take children away from moms, and then everyone gets hurt. She said if I made things harder, I might lose both of you." Amanda closed her eyes. The judge's expression darkened. "Show me the one you mentioned, Skylar." The next video showed our kitchen. Our kitchen, the chipped tile near the pantry I had always meant to replace, the little magnet shaped like a strawberry on the refrigerator, Amanda's blue ceramic fruit bowl on the counter. In the frame, Amanda stood with a man I did not know. Tall dark hair, a close-trimmed beard, expensive watch, shirt sleeves rolled in the casual way of men who want to look effortless. He leaned in and kissed her. Not a quick kiss, not a mistake. A practiced, intimate kiss in the room where I made Skylar pancakes on Saturday mornings. My hands gripped the edge of the table. The video moved slightly because Skylar's little hands had trembled while recording. Amanda laughed softly in the clip, and the man said something I could not fully hear. Then Amanda touched his chest and said, "Not here too long. She is supposed to be asleep and Dennis could call." The man laughed. "Dennis always calls before he comes home, right?" Amanda smiled. "Dennis always announces himself. He thinks that is being considerate." The room turned colder around me. Judge Morrison asked, "Who is the man, Skylar?" "Mommy calls him Marcus," Skylar said. "He comes when Daddy is at work. Sometimes they go into Mommy's room and close the door. Sometimes they talk at the kitchen table about money and the house and court. Sometimes Mommy tells me he is just a friend from the boutique, but friends do not kiss like that." She said it without drama, which made it worse. A child describing a violation with the tired precision of someone who had already spent too long trying to make it make sense. The videos kept coming, not all at once. The judge stopped several times to establish when they were recorded, how Skylar had made them, whether she had altered anything, whether anyone had told her to record. Each answer was simple and devastating. "No, nobody told me. No, I did not change them. Yes, it is Mommy's voice. Yes, I know because I live with her." In one video, Amanda sat in the dining room with Marcus, papers spread out between them. I recognized the table because I had refinished it myself after Skylar spilled nail polish on it 2 years earlier. Amanda's voice was clear. "Mara says I should ask for at least $4,000 a month. Dennis makes close to $90,000, and he will probably feel guilty enough not to fight too hard if we frame it correctly." Marcus asked about the house. Amanda said the house was key because stability mattered in custody. and once she had primary custody, the house and support would follow. Marcus asked if I suspected anything. Amanda laughed. Dennis is completely clueless. He is so buried in work and so invested in seeing himself as a good man that he will rationalize anything. I could have an affair in front of him, and he would find a way to blame himself. I looked down at my hands because I could not look at anyone else. The worst part was that she was not entirely wrong. I had rationalized everything. The late nights, the guest room, the phone calls that ended when I entered, the sudden errands with Skylar that left my daughter quiet, the way Amanda began correcting my memories, telling me I had not promised to come home early when I had, telling me Skylar was not disappointed when she was, telling me my concerns were stress, age, sensitivity, guilt. I had accepted her edits to reality because I loved her, and because doubt felt less dangerous than confrontation. Another video showed Amanda coaching Skylar. That one hurt differently because it did not expose betrayal between adults. It exposed a slow poisoning. Amanda sat on Skylar's bed, smoothing the comforter with one hand. Her voice was soft, almost tender. If someone asks you about Daddy, you do not need to say anything bad, sweetheart. You can just say he works a lot and is not home much. That is true, right? In the recording, Skylar's little voice answered, but Daddy is home. He reads to me. He makes pancakes. He came to my real recital. Amanda sighed in a patient way I now recognized as pressure. Yes, he does some nice things, but grown-up truth is bigger than one pancake breakfast. Mommy has been lonely. Mommy has carried the family. Sometimes you have to help people understand the whole picture. Skylar said, I do not want to say Daddy does not love me. Amanda's face hardened in the video barely, just a tightening at the mouth. Nobody said that. But if Mommy is not happy, does that make you happy? Do you want Mommy to stay sad so Daddy can pretend everything is fine? Skylar lowered her eyes. No. Then you tell the truth in a way that helps Mommy. That is what families do. Watching it, I felt shame burn through me, because my daughter had come to me weeks before with a question about lying and I had missed it. We had been sitting at her desk with a math worksheet. She had asked, Daddy, how do you know when someone is lying to you? I had called it a grown-up question. I had not asked enough. I had not stayed in the discomfort long enough to let her tell me. I had brought it to Amanda later, and Amanda had laughed gently, saying children heard things at school and dramatized them. I had believed the adult who lied instead of the child who was asking for rescue. The most devastating video was from 3 days before court. Amanda and Marcus were in the dining room again. The angle was low, as if the tablet had been hidden under a chair. Amanda sounded tired but satisfied. Once this is settled and Dennis is out of the picture, we can finally live the life we planned. The house is perfect. The support will cover the mortgage, and the boutique can recover once I stop bleeding money. Marcus asked, what about Skylar? Amanda answered too quickly. She will adjust. Kids adapt. If Dennis wants to see her, every other weekend is generous enough. Besides, once you are around more, she will have a real father figure. Marcus said, what if he fights? Amanda laughed, but there was irritation in it. With what? His work schedule proves my case for me. I have screenshots, calendars, witnesses who will say he missed things. And Mara says judges do not like fathers who think money equals parenting. Dennis will fold if he thinks fighting hurts Skylar. He always folds when guilt is involved. I felt Robert's hand briefly touch my arm, grounding me perhaps, though I did not look at him. He always folds when guilt is involved. Amanda had known the mechanism of my love and used it like a lever. When the judge called a recess to review the videos privately with counsel, the courtroom dissolved into fragments. Mara pulled Amanda into the hallway, whispering with visible urgency. Amanda's face was no longer pale. It had gone tight and furious, the kind of fury that does not yet have permission to speak. Robert took the tablet after asking Skylar's permission and made notes with a speed I had not seen from him all morning. I sat in the same wooden chair, unable to move. Skylar climbed into the seat beside me and looked at my face, as if trying to determine whether she had broken me. Are you mad at me, Daddy? She asked. I turned toward her so quickly, the question felt like a slap. Mad at you? No, sweetheart, no. I pulled her carefully against me, aware suddenly of how fragile she was, How warm, how real, how much bigger her courage had been than my blindness. "You are the bravest person I know. I am so sorry you had to carry this. I am so sorry you saw those things." She leaned into my side but did not fully relax. "I tried to tell you. I asked about lying." "I know," I said, and the words nearly failed me. "I know. I should have listened better." She shook her head as if protecting me even then. "Mommy said if I told, you might get mad and go away, or she might take me away faster. She said courts listen to moms because moms know feelings better. She said I should not make grown-up problems worse." I closed my eyes. Even in that moment, Amanda had a voice inside my child, and I did not know how long it would take to get it out. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison's face had changed. She was still composed, but the neutral patience was gone. She looked like someone who had opened a cabinet expecting documents and found a weapon. "Mrs. Patterson," she said, "I have reviewed several of these recordings. Do you dispute that the voice on them is yours?" Amanda sat very still. Mara leaned close and whispered. Amanda's mouth moved once, then closed. Judge Morrison waited. Amanda finally said, "They are private conversations taken out of context by a child who could not possibly understand adult relationships." The judge's voice cooled. "That is not an answer. Do you dispute that the voice is yours?" Amanda did not answer. The silence answered for her. Robert stood and moved for emergency temporary custody, for reconsideration of every claim Amanda had made, for permission to submit counterclaims based on fraud, parental alienation, and intentional misrepresentation to the court. Mara tried to salvage what could not be salvaged, arguing foundation, admissibility, child confusion, marital privacy. The judge listened long enough to show restraint and then cut through it. "Counselor, there is no marital privacy privilege that protects a party from consequences when she is recorded planning to manipulate a custody proceeding, alienate a child from her father, and misrepresent facts to this court. We will address formal admissibility in proper motions, but I have heard enough today to make immediate temporary orders in the child's best interest." Amanda lost control slowly at first. Her posture cracked before her voice did. She leaned back as if the chair had betrayed her. Her eyes moved from the judge to Mara, to Marcus's absent place in the world, and finally to Skylar. That was where the real Amanda surfaced. Not the woman on the recordings, not the wife in court, but the mother who saw her child not as a person, but as the reason the plan had failed. "You little brat," she hissed, low enough that perhaps she thought only we would hear it, but courtrooms carry certain kinds of ugliness. Skylar flinched as if something had struck her cheek. Amanda's face twisted. "Do you have any idea what you have done? You ruined everything." I moved before I thought, not toward Amanda, not aggressively, but between her line of sight and my daughter. The bailiff stepped closer. Judge Morrison's voice cracked like a door slamming. "Mrs. Patterson, you will not address the child that way in my courtroom." Amanda stood up. The performance was dead now. "You are all acting like I am a monster because I wanted a life. Dennis has been absent for years. He is boring. He is predictable. He is emotionally dead. I gave up everything for him. I carried that house. I carried that child. I deserved to be loved by someone who saw me." Judge Morrison stared at her. "Your daughter saw you clearly, Mrs. Patterson. That appears to be the problem." The orders came down like iron. Temporary emergency custody to me. Supervised visitation for Amanda pending evaluation. No removal of Skylar from my care. Temporary exclusive possession of the house to me, with Amanda allowed to retrieve personal belongings under supervision. Spousal support deferred, and likely barred pending investigation into fraud and financial misconduct. A full custody evaluation. A referral for review of potential perjury and misrepresentation. Each sentence should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing in the ruins of my own living room after a fire, and being told the insurance would cover the frame. Amanda screamed when she understood. "You cannot take my daughter from me." Judge Morrison said, "I am not taking her. Your choices have placed restrictions on your access, because this court must protect her from further manipulation." Amanda turned toward Skylar again. "Are you happy now? You destroyed your own family. When you are older, you will understand what you did to me." That was when something inside me finally shifted into a shape I recognized as resistant. For 15 years, I had softened every hard thing. I had explained Amanda's sharpness as stress, her withdrawals as fatigue, her disdain as frustration with life rather than me. I had stood in court that morning prepared to accept some version of guilt, if it meant Skylar would be spared conflict. But watching Amanda blame a sobbing 7-year-old for telling the truth burned away the last of my hesitation. Your Honor, I said, rising before Robert could stop me, I request professional supervised visitation only. No private exchanges, no unsupervised calls. A mother who blames a child for exposing adult deception should not be alone with that child until a professional says it is safe. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. Amanda looked at me with such hatred that for a second I wondered how I had ever mistaken possession for love. You self-righteous bastard, she said. You think steady paychecks make you a good man. You think pancakes make you a father. You are nothing without the role you play. The judge had heard enough. Bailiff, remove Mrs. Patterson from my courtroom. Amanda was escorted out, still speaking, still accusing, still trying to turn the collapse of her own scheme into proof of everyone else's cruelty. The door closed behind her. The room seemed to exhale, but I did not. I do not think I exhaled fully for months. The days after court were not clean. People imagine truth as a light that enters a room and clears everything away. It does not. Truth is heavier than lies because once it arrives, everyone has to carry it. Skylar came home with me that evening and did not speak for almost an hour. She sat in the back seat holding Blue and staring out the window as the town slid past in amber streetlight. I kept checking the rearview mirror, wanting to say something fatherly and healing, but every sentence sounded false before it reached my mouth. At home, the house felt staged. Amanda's scarf still hung over the back of a chair. Her coffee mug sat beside the sink. The framed family photograph from a beach trip 3 summers earlier still smiled from the hallway wall, and I had to turn it face down because I could not walk past the 4 of us pretending anymore. Skylar stood in the living room and looked around as if the house itself might change now that the secret was out. Is Mommy coming tonight? She asked. Not tonight. The judge said she needs to stay somewhere else for now. Skylar nodded, then asked, is she mad at me forever? I knelt in front of her, but I did not lie. She is angry right now because she made choices and does not want to face them. That does not mean you did wrong. Skylar looked at the floor. But she said I ruined the family. No, sweetheart, the family was already hurt. You told the truth about the hurt. That is different. She did not seem comforted. Why did she want Marcus to be my real father? The question hollowed me out. I sat back on my heels and swallowed. I do not know how to answer that in a way that will make it hurt less. She thought she could replace things instead of fixing them. But nobody replaces your dad. I am here. She looked at me then, and for a moment she looked like a child again, not a witness, not a protector, not the keeper of evidence. Promise, she said. I promise. The middle months were the hardest, not because of court, but because of ordinary life. Trauma does not live only in dramatic rooms. It waits in cereal bowls, school drop-offs, bedtime stories, grocery aisles, and the sudden silence after a child asks whether people can stop loving you without saying so. Amanda's first supervised visit was held in a family services center with beige walls and toys that had been cleaned too many times. Skylar wore a yellow dress because she said Mommy liked yellow. She brushed her hair twice. She asked me if she should bring Blue, then decided not to because Mommy had once said blue made her look babyish. I sat in the waiting area while she went in with the supervisor. Through the narrow window in the door, I could see Amanda sitting stiffly at a small table, smiling with her lips but not her eyes. The visit lasted 12 minutes before the supervisor intervened. Later, the report said Amanda attempted to discuss court matters with the child, minimized the recordings, and suggested that Skylar had misunderstood private adult conversations. What the report did not capture was Skylar's face when she came out. She looked confused and ashamed, carrying a coloring page Amanda had not praised. In the car she said, Mommy says people can record things wrong. She says I made her sound bad because I was scared. I kept my hands on the steering wheel. Did she ask how you felt? Skylar thought about it. She asked if I missed her. Then she cried. Then she said if I really missed her, I would tell the judge I wanted visits at home. It took everything in me not to let anger fill the car. Instead, I said, adults are not supposed to ask children to fix adult problems. If Mommy feels sad, she needs to talk to another grown-up, not make you responsible. Skylar nodded, but that night she wet the bed for the first time since she was 4. She cried with humiliation while I changed the sheets, and I held her in the hallway while she whispered, I thought if I told the truth, everything would stop being scary. I had no answer that was not a lie. So I said, I know. Sometimes truth stops one scary thing and shows us the next one. But I am here for this one too. Amanda's control did not vanish when the judge restricted her. It changed forms. Emails came through attorneys, but the tone was still hers, polished and poisonous. She demanded specific clothing for visits, because she said Skylar looked unkempt in the outfits I chose. She requested medical records, school logs, therapy updates, photographs, proof that I was feeding Skylar properly, proof that I had adjusted my work schedule. She sent a list of Skylar's supposed anxieties, most of which appeared to be projections of Amanda's own narrative. She claimed Skylar was too young to understand what she had done, and that I was now exploiting her as a weapon. She asked that the tablet be turned over because continued possession might reinforce unhealthy fixation. Robert told me not to respond emotionally, only factually, and I learned to write replies that felt like placing stones in a wall. Skylar is attending therapy weekly. Skylar's pediatrician confirms she is healthy. Skylar's school reports improved participation. The tablet remains evidence and is held by counsel. Each message cost me sleep. I would sit at the kitchen table after Skylar went to bed, the house dark except for the small lamp over the stove, and read Amanda's latest demand until my eyes blurred. Some nights I almost wrote what I truly wanted to say. How could you? How long did you hate me? Did you ever love our daughter as a person, or only as leverage? But I never sent those words, because Amanda would have used them. That was one of the cold lessons of the aftermath. People who manipulate do not stop needing material. Skylar changed in small, uneven ways. She became better at school but worse at being surprised. If I entered a room too quickly, she startled. If my phone rang during dinner, her eyes went to it immediately, measuring whether work had returned to take me away. She asked precise questions about schedules. What time will you be home? What time exactly? If traffic happens, how many minutes? If your boss calls, will you still come? At first I answered with reassurance, then learned in therapy that reassurance without reliability can become another form of pressure. So I began making fewer promises and keeping everyone. I negotiated with my company for 2 work-from-home days and a hard stop at 5:30 unless there was a genuine emergency. My manager, who had known me for 12 years, looked at me across a video call and said, "Dennis, I wish you had asked for this sooner." I almost laughed because that sentence contained an entire life. I had believed I was indispensable everywhere, except where I was truly needed. Now I closed my laptop at 5:25 and felt panic the first dozen times, as if the world might punish me for leaving work unfinished. It did not. The company survived. The customers survived. The only thing that did not survive was my old excuse. The custody evaluation stretched across weeks. There were interviews, home visits, forms, collateral witnesses, school reports, therapist notes, financial records, and supervised observation. Amanda presented herself well at first. She arrived in soft colors, spoke in measured tones, described herself as devastated but committed to healing, and repeatedly said she wanted Skylar to have a relationship with both parents. Then the evaluator asked why Skylar had felt the need to record 17 videos. Amanda's face shifted. She said Skylar was unusually anxious, imaginative, perhaps influenced by my unspoken resentment. When asked whether she had told Skylar I did not really want to spend time with her, Amanda said children often misinterpret adult sadness. When asked whether she had introduced Marcus to Skylar as a future father figure, Amanda said Marcus had been a friend who cared about the family. When asked why she had referred to me as a paycheck in a recording, she said she had been venting. Every explanation was technically shaped to avoid confession, and every explanation made her look less like a repentant mother and more like a strategist who had lost the room and was still rearranging furniture. The evaluator's report, when it came, was clinical and devastating. It described emotional manipulation, role reversal, exposure of the child to adult conflict, attempted parental alienation, and lack of insight by the mother. Lack of insight. 2 sterile words for a woman who looked at her crying child and saw betrayal. Meanwhile, the financial side of Amanda's life began to collapse in a way I had not expected. I had thought the affair and court strategy were the whole story, but fraud rarely stays inside one drawer. Robert's discovery requests uncovered irregular transfers from the boutique accounts, vendor payments that had been redirected, personal expenses disguised as inventory purchases, and cash withdrawals that matched dates Amanda had told me she was visiting her sister. Her business partners, two women who had trusted her because she was charming and organized and knew how to sound wounded before anyone accused her, pressed charges. Marcus disappeared almost immediately. He stopped answering Amanda's calls. He deleted his social media. Robert's investigator found that Marcus had a history of attaching himself to women with assets, promises, or access. Amanda's great love story had been another transaction, and when the transaction failed, he exited. I expected that revelation to make me feel vindicated. It did not. It made me feel tired. I had lost my wife to a fantasy, and even the fantasy had not wanted her without my money. Before the final hearing, the strangest and most suffocating part was not what happened in court, but what happened in the spaces between court dates, because those spaces gave Amanda room to keep existing inside our lives without being physically present. The house itself became an evidence room. I could not open a drawer without wondering who had opened it before me and why. In the laundry room, I found a receipt from a restaurant 2 towns over dated on a night Amanda had told me she was doing inventory at the boutique. In the glove compartment of her old car, which she had left behind because the judge had not yet decided who would keep which vehicle, I found a parking garage ticket from a hotel near the airport. None of these things mattered legally anymore, not compared with the videos, but they mattered to me because each small discovery reopened the same wound in a different place. I would stand with a receipt in my hand and remember the exact night it represented. I would remember making Skylar macaroni and cheese, telling her mommy was working hard and we should be proud of her. I would remember Skylar asking if mommy would be home before bedtime and me saying maybe, because at that point I still thought maybe meant something. The cruelty of betrayal is not only that someone lies to you, it is that afterward, your own kindness becomes evidence against you. Every generous assumption I had made turned into a place where Amanda had hidden. Skylar noticed my searching even when I tried to hide it. One afternoon, I was in the hallway closet looking for the warranty paperwork for the furnace, because winter was coming, and the pilot light had begun making a small, uncertain sound. Behind a stack of old board games, I found a white shopping bag from a jewelry store. Inside was an empty velvet box and a sales slip for earrings I had never seen, paid for with the joint credit card on a Saturday Amanda had said she was taking Skylar to the Children's Museum. I stood there too long. Skylar came down the hallway in socks, holding a library book against her chest, and saw the bag in my hand. Her eyes moved from my face to the box and back. She did not ask what it was. She asked whether I wanted her to go to her room. That question broke something fresh in me. No, I said too quickly. No, sweetheart, you did not do anything wrong. She nodded, but she remained near the wall, body angled toward escape. In therapy later, Dr. Martinez called it monitoring. She said children who live around emotional instability become weather watchers. They scan adult faces for storms. They learn to leave before the first thunderclap. I listened to that and thought of how many times Skylar must have watched Amanda's face change when my car pulled into the driveway. How many times she must have learned to recognize the switch from private cruelty to public softness. How much of childhood had been spent studying atmosphere instead of playing in it. Amanda's second supervised visit was worse than the first because she came prepared. She brought a small gift bag with tissue paper and a ribbon, and when Skylar entered the room, Amanda opened her arms with the careful restraint of a woman who knew she was being observed. Skylar hesitated before stepping into the hug. I watched from the observation window until the supervisor closed the blind. The hour passed slowly. I sat in the waiting area beneath a poster about healthy co-parenting and listened to the hum of a vending machine. Across from me, a father younger than I was stared at his phone with both thumbs frozen above the screen, and a grandmother whispered into a tissue. Family court made private grief public, but it did not make grief less lonely. When Skylar came out, she held the gift bag but not by the handles. She pinched the top between 2 fingers as if it might leak. In the car, she placed it on the floor. I waited until we were home before asking if she wanted to open it. She shook her head. Mommy said it was a special bracelet, she said. She said every girl needs something from her mother, so she remembers who loved her first. She said if I wear it, she will know I have not forgotten her. My jaw tightened. Did she say anything else? Skylar nodded. She said you will probably say I cannot wear it because you want to erase her. Then she told the supervisor she was only talking about memories. The sophistication of it stunned me. Amanda had learned the rules and found the spaces between them. She could not say court, so she said memories. She could not blame, so she gave a bracelet with a hook hidden inside it. I opened the bag after Skylar went to bed. The bracelet was silver, delicate, too expensive for a woman claiming financial hardship. The charm was a tiny heart engraved with "Mommy always knows." I placed it in an evidence envelope because Robert had taught me that objects could speak later when people denied language. The third visit lasted only 20 minutes. Amanda asked Skylar whether she still made videos. The supervisor intervened immediately, but Skylar had already gone rigid. Amanda smiled and said she was only asking because she wanted to make sure Skylar felt safe expressing herself. Then she leaned toward Skylar and said, "Some people teach children to be suspicious, but mothers understand when children are just trying to be good." The supervisor ended the visit. Amanda cried in the hallway, loudly enough for us to hear through the door. She said she was being punished for loving her child. She said the system destroys mothers. She said I had turned Skylar into a witness instead of a daughter. I stood with Skylar's coat over my arm and said nothing because every sentence in me would have made things worse. Skylar covered her ears, not dramatically, not like a child throwing a tantrum, slowly, deliberately, as if sound itself had become unsafe. School became another battlefield of quiet consequences. Skylar's teacher, Mrs. Adelman, asked to meet with me after class one Thursday. She was a gentle woman with reading glasses on a chain and a voice that softened around children, but did not soften around facts. She told me Skylar was doing well academically, better than before in some areas, but she had begun intervening in other children's arguments with unusual intensity. If two classmates disagreed about whose turn it was, Skylar tried to document it. If someone denied taking a marker, Skylar searched for proof. During story time, when a character lied, she became visibly distressed and asked whether the liar would go to court. Mrs. Adelman said she was not alarmed exactly, but she was concerned. She is trying to make the world predictable, Mr. Patterson. She seems to believe that if she gathers enough facts, adults will finally behave correctly. I drove home from that meeting with my chest aching because I knew exactly where she had learned that. That night during homework, Skylar erased one answer so many times that the paper tore. She stared at the tear and whispered, "I messed it up." I told her paper could be taped. She said some things cannot. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, but again I would not lie. My own breakdown was quieter and therefore easier for people to miss. I functioned. I worked. I made lunches. I answered attorney emails. I learned how to braid hair badly and then better. I attended therapy with Skylar and individual therapy on Robert's recommendation, because he said courts like to see proactive stability, though eventually I went because I needed a place to say things I could not say in front of my daughter. But at night, after the dishes were done and Skylar's door was half open with the hall light on, I would stand in the master bedroom and feel physically unable to cross to my side of the bed. Amanda's absence was not empty. It was accusatory. Her dresser still smelled faintly of her perfume until I emptied it. Her side of the closet was a row of hangers like ribs. I slept on the couch for almost 3 weeks, telling myself it was because I did not want to wake Skylar if she needed me. The truth was that the bed had become a place where I could not distinguish memory from performance. Had she lain beside me planning her exit? Had she kissed me goodnight after speaking to Marcus? Had she turned away because she was tired or because she was already gone? The mind becomes cruel when given unanswered questions. It does not leave them closed. It opens them in the dark. There was one evening when Amanda called from an unknown number, violating the communication order. I should not have answered, but the number appeared local, and I thought it might be school. Her voice came through before I could speak, low and breathless, not the courtroom voice, not the recording voice, but something older, something close to the woman I remembered. "Dennis, please do not hang up." I froze in the pantry with a box of cereal in my hand. "Amanda, you cannot call me directly. I know, and I am sorry, but nobody is listening to me. Everyone has decided I am this terrible person, and I need you to understand that I was unhappy. I made mistakes, but I was unhappy for so long." Her voice cracked. "You left me alone in that marriage. You did. You have to admit that part." There it was, the old lever, guilt placed gently beneath the ribs. For a few seconds, I was back in the old house of myself, trying to be fair, trying to accept responsibility, trying to prove I was not cruel by agreeing with the person hurting me. I said I worked too much. I should have been more present. She exhaled as if she had been waiting for that opening. "Exactly. And when someone is lonely, they do things. They reach for someone who saves them. Marcus was not the cause. He was the symptom." I closed my eyes. "Amanda, you tried to take my daughter from me using lies. You coached her. You planned to replace me. That is not loneliness." Her tone changed so subtly that it frightened me. "You are enjoying this, aren't you? You like being the saint. You like everyone telling you how brave Skylar was and how wrong I was. But when she grows up, she will understand that you let her destroy her mother." I looked toward the hallway, terrified Skylar might hear. "Do not call again," I said. "If you do, I will send this to Robert." Amanda laughed once softly. "Still documenting. I guess she gets it from you now." Then she hung up. I stood in the pantry for a long time holding the cereal box, while my heartbeat hammered in my ears. That call did not change the case. It changed me. It showed me that even after exposure, Amanda's first instinct was not remorse. It was access. The evaluator's home visit came on a rainy Monday. Skylar had insisted on arranging her stuffed animals neatly on her bed because she thought the evaluator might ask them questions. The house smelled like lemon cleaner because I had cleaned too much, then worried that cleaning too much looked staged, then stopped and left the laundry basket in the hallway because real parents have laundry. The evaluator, Ms. Green, walked through the room slowly, asking Skylar where she did homework, where she slept, what happened if she felt scared at night, who made breakfast, who packed lunch, who came to school events. Skylar answered honestly, too honestly at times. When asked what happened if Daddy was sad, she said, "He tries to hide in the kitchen, but I can tell." Ms. Green looked at me, not unkindly. I felt exposed. Later in the kitchen, while Skylar drew at the table, Ms. Green asked me what I wanted for Amanda long term. It was the kind of question that sounds simple, because the person asking it already knows it is not. I said I wanted Skylar safe. Ms. Green waited. I added that if Amanda could become safe, I wanted Skylar to have a mother. The sentence hurt because it acknowledged two things at once. The mother existed and the safety did not. Ms. Green wrote that down. Then she asked what I wanted for myself. I almost said nothing. That had been my default answer for years. Instead I said, "I want to stop living like every accusation might be true." She looked up then, and for the first time in months, I felt seen by an adult who was not being paid to destroy or defend me, but to understand the damage. By the time the final hearing arrived, Skylar had stopped asking whether Amanda would apologize. Children are sometimes practical in ways adults mistake for resilience. She no longer expected a magical sentence that would undo anything. But she did develop rituals. Before every court-related appointment, she packed Blue in her backpack even if she did not take him out. Before therapy, she checked that the car doors were locked twice. Before supervised visits, back when visits still happened, she asked me to say the same sentence in the parking lot. "You can love mommy and still tell the truth." I said it every time. The last time I said it, she looked at me and replied, "I know, but I do not think mommy loves the truth." Then she got out of the car and walked toward the visitation center with her small shoulders squared. That was the thing about the whole ordeal that never stopped hurting. The world praised Skylar for being brave, but bravery was not a gift she should have needed. It was armor built too early. The final hearing did not feel like triumph. Amanda appeared thinner, harder, stripped of some of the polished confidence she had worn at the first hearing. Her hair was pulled back severely. She did not look at me when she entered, but she looked at Skylar, who sat beside me with both hands folded in her lap. Skylar no longer carried the tablet. The court had copies. The evidence no longer needed her small hands to hold it, but the absence of it did not make her less burdened. Judge Morrison granted me full legal and physical custody. Amanda received limited supervised visitation, subject to therapeutic recommendations, and no authority over schooling, medical care, travel, or counseling. Her claims for spousal support were dismissed. The house remained with me. My retirement remained protected. Restitution and separate civil claims were left to other courts, and other rooms. Amanda listened without reacting until the judge said she would not be permitted to discuss the divorce, recordings, court, Marcus, or blame with Skylar during any visit. Then Amanda laughed once quietly. "So I am allowed to be her mother only if I pretend none of this happened." Judge Morrison looked at her for a long moment. "You are allowed to be her mother if you can stop making her responsible for your consequences." Amanda's face closed. That was the closest thing to a sentence I think she truly heard. The last supervised visit happened 3 weeks later. Amanda spent most of it asking Skylar whether she remembered happy times, whether she remembered baking cookies, whether she remembered when Mommy used to braid her hair. The supervisor later said nostalgia can be healthy, but Amanda's use of it appeared coercive. Skylar came home quiet. At bedtime she asked, if Mommy was nice before, was that fake too? I sat on the edge of her bed, in the room we had repainted lavender, because she said purple felt brave. I wanted to tell her no, that love is simple, that nice moments remain pure even when people later do terrible things. But I had promised not to lie. I said, I think some moments were real, and I think some people can be loving sometimes and still be harmful at other times. That is one of the hardest things to understand. Skylar stared at the ceiling. I do not like hard things. I know. She turned toward me. Do you miss Mommy? I answered slowly. I miss who I thought she was. Skylar nodded as if that made sense in a place deeper than childhood. I miss that Mommy too, she said. 6 months after the first hearing, the final divorce decree arrived in a manila envelope carried by Robert Chen on a Saturday morning, while I was making pancakes. In another kind of story, that morning would have been warm and healing. The sun did come through the kitchen window. Skylar did color at the table. The pancakes were golden. The house was quieter than it had been in years. But quiet is not the same as peace. It was the quiet of a battlefield after everyone has left. The quiet that lets you see what was damaged. Robert accepted coffee and placed the envelope beside my plate. Everything is official, he said. Amanda has signed the final documents. She is waiving future visitation for now. Her attorney says she has moved out of state to live with a cousin while the boutique case proceeds. She is not requesting contact unless Skylar asks when she is older. I looked at Skylar. She was coloring a castle, carefully keeping the purple inside the lines. Did she hear? Of course she heard. Children hear the things adults hope they do not. Robert lowered his voice anyway and explained the practical pieces. Full custody, no consultation required, travel permitted, medical and educational decisions solely mine, property division finalized, no support, no further pending family court dates unless Amanda refiled. He shook my hand before leaving and said, "You and your daughter can move forward now." I nodded because that was what people expected. But after the door closed, I stood in the hallway holding the decree and felt no forward motion at all. Only the official weight of an ending. Skylar asked if Mommy was not coming back. I sat across from her at the kitchen table. The pancakes had gone cold. Probably not for a while, I said. She has chosen to live far away and work on her own life. That means it is you and me here. She set down her crayon. Her face was calm, and that calm hurt me more than tears. I feel sad that Mommy made bad choices, she said. I feel happy that we do not have to keep secrets. And I feel scared because if someone can be nice and also lying, then I do not know how to tell. That was the sentence that stayed. Not the videos, not Amanda's hiss in court, not the judge's orders. That sentence, my daughter had not simply lost a mother in the ordinary sense. She had lost the basic childhood assumption that familiar love is safe. I reached across and took her hand. We will learn together, I said. Some people are confusing. That does not mean everyone is. She looked at me with a patience too old for her face. You did not know either, Daddy. I had no defense. No, I said. I did not. We went to the park that afternoon because I had promised, and because children still need ducks even after betrayal. Skylar fed them breadcrumbs in tiny pinches, careful not to let the bigger geese bully the smaller birds. I watched her enforce fairness among animals with more confidence than she had ever been allowed to enforce fairness among adults. She laughed twice, genuine laughs, bright and brief, and each one cut through me because I realized I had begun counting her joy like medicine doses. Later we got ice cream. She chose strawberry, then changed to chocolate, then apologized for changing her mind. I told her changing her mind about ice cream was allowed. She asked if changing your mind about people was allowed too. I said yes. She asked if loving someone and not wanting to see them was allowed. I said yes again, though the word felt inadequate. That night we watched a movie about a brave girl who saves her family. Halfway through, Skylar fell asleep against my shoulder. I looked around the living room, at the family photograph still absent from the wall, at the space where Amanda's books used to be, at the faint rectangular mark on the paint where a wedding portrait had hung. The house was ours now, legally, practically, physically, but it did not feel restored. It felt edited. Whole chapters had been ripped out, and the remaining pages still showed the tears. People later told me I was lucky. Lucky Skylar had recorded. Lucky the judge listened. Lucky Amanda exposed herself. Lucky I got custody. Lucky Marcus disappeared before he could do more damage. Lucky the financial fraud came out before it destroyed me. They were not wrong, but luck is a strange word to use for a child who learned to gather evidence against her own mother before she learned multiplication tables. Luck is a strange word for a father who had to watch videos of his wife laughing at his trust, while his daughter stood beside a judge, trying not to shake. Yes, we survived. Yes, the court believed us. Yes, Amanda left without taking the house, the retirement, or the child she had tried to use. But survival is not the same as victory. Victory implies something clean. There was nothing clean about the months that followed. Skylar still asked whether I was really working when I opened my laptop. She still watched adults too closely. I still woke some nights at 3:00 a.m. with Amanda's recorded voice in my head, saying good little provider. I still found myself replaying every year of the marriage, trying to locate the first lie, as if finding the beginning could make the ending less senseless. It never did. The final change came quietly. One evening in early spring, I found Skylar in her room sitting on the floor beside the closet. The tablet was in front of her, not the evidence tablet, a new one with parental controls and no old videos on it. She was not crying. She was staring at a blank drawing app. I sat in the doorway and waited, because therapy had taught me not to rush silence. After a while she said, I do not want to remember her voice from the videos anymore. I said, I know. She looked at me. But if I forget, does that mean she gets away with it? The question was so adult that I had to look away. No, I said. Forgetting pain is not the same as forgiving what caused it. You are allowed to put heavy things down. She thought about that for a long time. Then she said, I do not know how. Neither did I. I still do not. So this is where the story ends. Not with a perfect Saturday morning, not with a healed father and daughter in a sunlit kitchen, not with the villain punished enough to make the damage make sense. Amanda left town. Marcus vanished. The court file closed. The house remained. Skylar grew taller, learned new songs, made new friends, and smiled more often. But sometimes the smile paused before reaching her eyes, as if asking permission from a world that had taught her joy could be interrupted. I kept my job but stopped giving it my life. I made pancakes. I attended school events. I answered questions honestly, even when honesty made the room colder. I became more present, but presence did not erase absence. It only stood beside it. There are still mornings when I pass the courthouse on the way to a client meeting and feel my hands go cold on the steering wheel. There are still nights when I look at the empty side of the bed and realize I am not mourning Amanda exactly, but the man I was when I believed her. That man is gone. He was useful. He was trusting. He folded when guilt was involved. He thought love meant assuming the best, until the worst became undeniable. I survived him too, though survival left less of me than I expected. Skylar and I live in the same house, but we do not live in the same world we did before. The walls are painted differently. The schedules are healthier. The kitchen is warmer. The secrets are gone, or at least the known ones are. But there is a permanent caution in us now. We love each other carefully. We tell the truth carefully. We do not slam doors. We do not use silence as punishment. We do not say everything is fine when it is not. On paper, that may sound like healing. In practice, it feels like learning to walk through a beautiful room after finding glass in the carpet. You can keep walking. You can even laugh there someday. But some part of you always remembers to look down before every step.